She had rehearsed the words in the elevator on the way up. Floor by floor, she mouthed them silently, pressing her back against the mirrored wall, watching her reflection do what she could not yet do in front of another human being: beg. By the time the doors opened on the 42nd floor, she had decided she would not cry. She had made that promise to herself 3 times in the past week and broken it twice. Today would be different. Today she needed to be made of something harder than grief. The lobby of Harmon Capital was everything her life was not. Marble floors that caught the afternoon light and threw it back in sheets of pale gold. Receptionists who looked like they'd been selected for their cheekbones. Tall windows overlooking the city as if the building itself had contempt for the streets below. Maya Chen walked through it all with her chin level and her hands steady at her sides, even though her heart was doing something complicated and painful inside her chest. She had called ahead. That was the part she was still embarrassed about. She had actually called his office, spoken to his assistant in a calm voice, and requested 15 minutes of his time on a matter she described as personal and urgent. The assistant had paused just long enough for Maya to understand that people did not typically call Callum Harmon's private line to discuss personal matters. But she had been connected anyway. And Callum had said yes. She did not let herself think too long about why he had said yes. The assistant, a composed young woman named Dana, met her at the elevator bank and walked her down a long hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Maya's entire apartment building. Dana did not make small talk. Maya was grateful for that. She was holding herself together with something thin and fragile and did not want the additional weight of polite conversation. And then Dana knocked twice on a heavy door, opened it, and there he was. Callum Harmon looked exactly like his photographs and nothing like them at the same time. In photographs he was handsome in a distant, architectural way, all sharp jaw and careful posture. In person he was warmer than she expected, or at least more present. He was standing when she entered, which surprised her. He had been looking out the window and he turned when she came in, and for a moment he simply looked at her the way people look at something they are trying to place. Maya Chen, he said. Not a question. He already knew. Thank you for seeing me, she said. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. She Saturday. He Saturday. Dana disappeared and closed the door behind her without a sound. The office was quieter than she had expected 42 floors up to be. She could hear herself breathe. She could hear the faint sound of the city below, muffled and small, the way trouble sounds when it belongs to someone else. You said it was personal, he said. He was watching her with an expression she could not fully read, not unkind, but careful. The expression of a man who had learned to be careful because the world had given him reasons. It is, she said. She had rehearsed this part too. I need to ask you something, and I'm going to ask you to hear me out completely before you say no, because I think once I explain, it will make sense. Or at least it will make the kind of sense that desperate situations make when you're in the middle of them. Something shifted in his expression. Possibly amusement. Possibly interest. All right, he said. She told him about Daniel first. She told him the way she had been telling the story to herself for the past 3 weeks. Matter-of-factly, the way you describe a car accident after the shock has worn off and only the facts remain. She and Daniel had been together for 4 years. They had planned a life together in the casual, incremental way people do when they are young and in love and not paying close enough attention to who they are becoming. Apartment keys exchanged. Holidays attended together. Parents introduced. The whole architecture of a shared future assembled piece by piece until it felt as permanent as anything she had ever known. And then Daniel had met someone. And the someone had money. And Daniel, it turned out, had always cared more about money than he had ever let on, or perhaps more than he had even admitted to himself. He left 3 weeks ago, Maya said. He didn't apologize. He said it wasn't personal. He said he and I wanted different things. She paused. What he meant was that he wanted a life I couldn't give him. And he found someone who could. Callum said nothing. She was grateful for that too. His company is hosting a charity gala this Saturday, she said. The Hartwell Foundation dinner. I was supposed to attend with him. Our friends will be there. His family will be there. And apparently she will be there, the woman he's with now. Her name is Priya and she is beautiful and successful and I don't actually hate her because none of this is her fault, but I cannot walk into that room alone. Maya stopped. She looked at her hands. She looked back up at him. I cannot walk in there alone and watch him be happy with someone else while everyone who knew us as a couple looks at me and decides what to think. So you want me to go with you, Callum said. I want you to go with me, she confirmed. As my date. I want to walk in there with you, and I want it to be convincing, and I know that is an enormous thing to ask of a man I have never met before today, and I want you to know that I understand completely how strange this is. But I didn't know who else to ask. My friends would agree and then be terrible at it. My cousin would spend the whole evening making it about himself. And you, she stopped again. And me, he said. You went to school with Daniel, she said. You were in the same program at Stanford. He has mentioned you. He would know who you are, and he would not be able to pretend otherwise, and I think, she exhaled slowly. I think that matters to me more than it should, and I'm not proud of that, but I'm being honest with you because you deserve honesty if I'm going to ask you for something this significant. Callum was quiet for a long moment. He turned slightly in his chair, not away from her but not fully toward her either, the posture of a man thinking, not retreating. Maya waited. She had promised herself she would not fill the silence. Filling silence was what people did when they were afraid of the answer, and she had decided that whatever he said, she would accept it with dignity and leave the same way she came in. You said act like I love you, he said finally. I said act like you care about me, she corrected. There's a version of that isn't love. Warmth. Attention. The way someone looks at you when they've chosen you. And you think I can do that convincingly for a person I've known for? He glanced at his watch. 11 minutes. I think you're someone who is very good at being exactly what a situation requires, she said. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as the highest compliment I know how to give. He looked at her for a long moment with that careful, unreadable expression, and she held his gaze because she had come this far and she was not going to look away now. Saturday, he said. 7 o'clock, she said. The Hartwell Ballroom downtown. I know where it is. Of course you do. Another silence. Shorter this time. I'll need your number, he said. So we can talk before. There are things you'll need to tell me if this is going to be convincing. Details. Stories. The small things people know about each other. Her heart did something she had not given it permission to do. She reached into her bag, took out a card, and slid it across his desk. He picked it up and looked at it with the focused attention of a man who does nothing carelessly. Why me, really? He said. Not suspicious. Genuinely curious. She thought about the real answer for a second. Then she gave it to him. Because you said yes, she said. And I didn't expect you to. He set the card down on his desk. He looked at her. And for just a moment, one unguarded, unarchitectural, completely unplanned moment, something in his expression was not careful at all. Saturday, he said again. Saturday, she said. She stood, thanked him, and walked back through the marble lobby and into the elevator and all the way down 42 floors before she let herself feel anything. And what she felt, unexpectedly, was not relief. It was something quieter and more dangerous than relief. It was the first warmth she had felt in 3 weeks, and it had come from completely the wrong direction. She spent the next 3 days trying not to think about him. This was harder than it should have been, and she knew why, and she refused to examine why too closely because examining it would require admitting things she was not ready to admit. She had gone to his office with a plan. A clean, transactional plan. She had asked for something specific, he had agreed, and that was the entirety of what had passed between them. 2 adults making a practical arrangement. Nothing in that sequence of events warranted the way his face kept appearing in her mind at inconvenient moments. On the subway, in the middle of emails, at 2 in the morning when she was supposed to be sleeping. She told herself it was gratitude. Gratitude was a reasonable and uncomplicated emotion that explained everything. He texted her Thursday evening. Not called, texted, which she appreciated because it gave her time to compose her face before responding, which she needed even though he could not see her face through a phone screen. The text said, "We should talk before Saturday. Are you free tomorrow afternoon?" She stared at it for approximately 45 seconds before typing back, "Yes." Where? He named a restaurant near his office. Small, he said. Quiet. Good for talking. She told herself this was logistics. 2 people coordinating the details of a performance. She picked out her outfit for the lunch the way she would pick out a costume, deliberately, without sentiment, and then changed it twice. He was already there when she arrived. Seated at a corner table, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, looking at something on his phone with the concentrated frown of a man who takes everything seriously, including menus. He stood when he saw her. She noticed this again, the standing, and filed it away in the category of things she was not examining too closely. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for suggesting it," she said. They Saturday. A waiter appeared and then disappeared. Coffee arrived. For a moment neither of them spoke, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who were both accustomed to silence and therefore not afraid of it. "I did some thinking," he said, "about what you need from Saturday. And I think the most important thing is that it feel real. Not performed. Because people who know him, people who have known you as a couple, they'll be looking for the seams. They'll be watching the way we interact when we think no one is watching. That's where performances fall apart." She nodded slowly. "You've thought about this." "I think about most things thoroughly," he said. It was not arrogant. It was simply accurate and he knew it. "So what do you suggest?" "Tell me about yourself," he said. "Not the version you'd tell at a job interview or at a dinner party where you don't know anyone. Tell me the real version. What you care about. What irritates you. What you're like when you've had a long day and you don't have the energy to be polite about it." She looked at him. "That's a very intimate request from someone who has known me for 3 days." "It is," he agreed. "But intimacy is the product we are selling Saturday night, so we should probably start somewhere." She laughed before she could stop herself. It surprised her, the laugh, because she had not laughed in a way that felt real in 3 weeks, and this one arrived without effort or warning, and she felt it in her chest the way you feel the first warm day after a long winter. "All right," she said. "Real version." She told him. She told him that she was a landscape architect, which people always found surprising because she looked, apparently, like someone who worked in communications or fashion or something with cleaner hands. She told him that she had grown up in a small town in Oregon where the rain came for 8 months of the year and had shaped her, she thought, in ways she was still discovering. She told him she was the kind of person who remembered the names of people's pets and forgot the names of people's siblings, which was socially inconvenient but apparently fundamental to her character. She told him that she was not actually a sad person, even though she understood she had presented as one on Monday. That what Daniel had done had hurt her in the specific, particular way that betrayal hurts, not just because of the loss itself but because of the recalibration it required. When someone leaves, you don't just lose them. You lose the version of yourself that existed in relation to them, and you have to figure out who you are without that architecture. Callum listened to all of this without interrupting. He listened the way very few people listened, as if what she was saying was the only thing in the room that mattered. "Your turn," she said, when she felt she had given enough. "My turn," he agreed. And he told her things too, in the measured, selected way of someone who did not typically do this and was choosing to do it anyway. He told her he had built his company at 26 from a position of almost total obscurity, which people always interpreted as a story of triumph, but which he experienced at the time as 3 years of sustained terror dressed in the costume of confidence. He told her he was better at seeing what was wrong with something than at appreciating what was right with it, and that this made him good at his work and occasionally difficult in his personal life. He told her he had known Daniel Hartwell in the way you know people at Stanford when you were both ambitious and 22, competitively, incompletely, with a fundamental mistrust that neither of them had ever been honest enough to name. "You don't like him," Maya said. "I don't dislike him," Callum said, which was a very precise distinction. "I think he is someone who always chose the easier version of himself. That's not a crime. It's a kind of cowardice, but it's a very common one." She looked at her coffee cup. "He wasn't always like that." "Maybe not," he said. "Or maybe you didn't see it because you love him." She thought about that. It had the weight of something true. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Why did you say yes? On Monday. You could have said no. You had every reason to say no." He was quiet for a moment. He turned his coffee cup slightly on its saucer, the only fidget she had seen from him. "Honestly." "Please." "Because the thing you asked for was unusual," he said. "And I have spent a very long time doing nothing unusual at all. My entire life is organized, optimized, and predictable, which is something I built deliberately and which serves me very well and which is, occasionally, completely suffocating." He paused. "You walked into my office looking like someone who had been brave enough to do something embarrassing for the sake of their own dignity. I found that interesting. I find interesting things difficult to refuse. She looked at him for a long moment. That is possibly the most honest thing anyone has said to me in months, she said. I find honesty efficient, he said. And there it was again, not arrogance, just accuracy, and it made her smile in a way she did not try to stop. They spent another hour at the table after the coffee was finished. He asked her questions about herself that she answered, and she asked him questions that he answered with the careful deliberateness of someone unused to being asked and choosing, today, to answer anyway. They established the story of how they had met, at a mutual friends gallery opening 4 months ago, which was plausible because their worlds overlapped in the way that certain professional circles in the city overlapped, tangentially but genuinely. They decided they had been quietly seeing each other since then. Quiet suited both of them, so it would be easy to perform. He asked what she needed from him on the night itself. She thought about it honestly. I need you to look at me like you chose me, she said. Like out of every room you have ever walked into, you noticed me and you kept noticing me and you haven't stopped. I need him to see that and believe it. Callum looked at her across the table. He was not performing anything in that moment. He was simply looking at her, and the looking had a quality to it that she could not entirely name, steady and direct and not without warmth. I can do that, he said quietly. She believed him. That was the part that unsettled her most, walking home afterward in the late afternoon light with the city moving around her and her thoughts moving in a different direction entirely. She believed him completely, and she could not tell anymore whether it was because he was a convincing man or because something in the way he had looked at her across the table had not felt like performance at all. Saturday was 2 days away. She was no longer sure she was ready for it. She was no longer sure, either, that Saturday was the thing she needed to be ready for.